today's topic would be a continuation of what we discussed in the last session, which is count and non-count nouns. It is going to be a little interesting today. Obviously, every class is interesting. This is going to be a little more fun one. So, because many times we use certain count and non-counts in a way we use it unconsciously, but actually there are certain things which has to be followed, like the rules or the senses which we have to see. There are certain rules in English while we use count and non-count nouns. So we'll discuss about it today. So starting with count and non-count nouns, what we often hear about count and non-count nouns is nouns which are countable are mostly pluralized, and non-count nouns cannot be pluralized. That is what we would have heard in most of the cases in all the classes, but which is not actually true in every situation. Sometimes count nouns cannot be pluralized and non-count nouns can be pluralized. There are certain rules where this could be applicable. So we'll see that. We'll see how and why it is possible. So moving on to the next one. So there are certain exceptions for this count and non-count nouns. That is, suppose there are certain nouns where even though it is a non-count nouns, the usage of it is such that we are talking specifically about one particular incident, not in general. In general, non-count nouns cannot be pluralized, but if you are talking specifically about things and those things are in multiple, even those things can be identified separately, or they can be distinguished separately. In such a situation, a non-count noun can also be pluralized. If you see here, I have had some difficulties finding a job. So difficulties is actually referring to a specific problems. So why that person is actually looking for a job and the person is facing some difficulties. Even though difficulty is a non-count noun, but here it is used in a count sense. So the non-count noun used in a count sense. We are talking about difficulties. We have been pluralized it. The reason is it is talking about specific thing, not in general. So here non-count noun takes place of count noun because of the specific use. So if you see the second example, the talks will take place in the granite building. So talk is usually talk cannot be distinguished in general, a single talk, but multiple talks can be distinguished only if that is talking about a specific thing. And if you see granite building, they are talking about talks specific, which are specifically talking about granite building. So that is the reason why we have put this non-count noun also in a count sense. The city was filled with bright lights and harsh sounds. So this lights is talking specifically about that particular city and the noises in that particular city. So even though the sounds, all these things are non-count nouns, but they are used in a count sense here. So that is, so those are certain exceptions where in general, if we are talking about a non-count noun, if it is specifically talking about certain things, and if they are in multiple numbers and they can be distinguished from one another, then we can use the non-count noun in count sense. We'll see the same example, same non-count nouns, how they can be used in a non-count sense. So here they have been used in a count sense. We'll see non-count sense. So these three examples are, these three belong to non-count sense. So if you see, she succeeded in school with little difficulty. Usually, in general, they are talking about a particular idea of how children usually suffer in the school, how they struggle to pass or to get some marks. So it is talking about a generic sense, not particularly related to an incident or a situation. They're talking in general. She succeeded in a school with little difficulty. So here, non-count noun will remain as a will be applicable as a non-count sense. Here we cannot use the count sense because we are not talking about specific thing. I dislike idle talk. So what the person is saying is, I dislike idle talk. Basically the talks which are not worthy of time, or basically the useless talks. So they're in general, they're saying that I don't like these things, I don't like that thing. So they're not talking specifically about this, any particular incident or situational thing. They're basically talking about their characteristics. Here in general it is being used. So talk is used in a non-count sense here. The non-count noun is used in non-count sense. So that is why we have not pluralized it. And if you see, light travels faster than sound. So it is a basic fact. It is a general fact. we are not talking anything specific here. So that is the reason why this non-count noun light, basically light is actually used in two different ways. Some people refer to lights and bulbs in general as a light, but here the light, which means is the roshni, which in general we talk. So this non-count noun is used in non-count sense. So that is why we have not pluralized it. So that is the thing. So these are two basic examples of non-count and non-count nouns. So they both can take each other's place depending upon the situation which the author or the writer communicating. So we'll also see some other examples here. So basically, non-count nouns can be used in a count sense, and count nouns can be used in a non-count sense, depending upon if they can separate or distinguish each other items. So anything which can be distinguished or separated from each other, which can be identified, those things are usually preferred. So some of the non-count nouns like food, drink, wine, bread, coffee, usually these food items, most of the times these can be pluralized. The reason is food cannot be the same. Food in India, food in China, food in Russia, there are multiple types of foods. So basically, if they are referring to that such particular example, or if there are different types of drinks, different types of wines. So even though in general wine or bread or coffee is a non-count noun, but still we can use it in count sense. So if you see some of the examples here, there are several French wines to choose from. So they are not talking about one particular wine, they're talking about different types of wines in French. So this non-count noun is pluralized here in this particular sense. And I prefer Sumatran coffees to Colombian. They're talking about different kinds of range of coffees which are available in Sumatran, that place. Here, if you see the third example, we use a variety of different batters in our bakery. So in our previous session, we discussed that batter is actually a non-count noun because batter cannot be distinguished in general. Different types of batters can be distinguished, but if a single batter we cannot distinguish unless until if we make it as a cake and separate it in terms of pieces, then we can call pieces as a count nouns, but in general batter is a non-count noun. But here in this case, batters is pluralized because they're talking about a wide variety or wide range of batters here, not one particular batter, maybe a wheat batter or maida batter or something like that, all different batters they're talking. So that is the reason why we have pluralized this. So it is not the word, it is actually the sense which we are using it. So it's not about the non-count or count noun, in which sense we are using, non-count sense or is it count sense. So those are important rules while we use them or term them. So in this regard, we can say that there must be some revision of the rule on the count and non-count nouns, like how we can be pluralized, how we can use it. So in case if we know for sure that they cannot be count or non-count, there would be certain words which can only fall into one category, like count, or they can be non-count. They cannot be both. In such a situation, we have to decide if the can be pluralized or not. In case if we know that this particular word can be used as a count sense and non-count sense also, then we have to check how appropriate it is to pluralize this. We'll see certain examples and we can understand from there. So just to summarize, these are the rules in this particular table if you see. So count noun. So in general, count noun can be pluralized. So that is why we have tick mark there. Count use. So count use can be a count noun or it can be a non-count noun. So any non-count noun or a count noun which is used in a count sense can be pluralized. So count noun in general can be pluralized, and count noun and non-count noun used in count sense can be pluralized. If you see the below two examples, non-count noun in general they cannot be pluralized. It is not appropriate. But if that is used in a non-count sense, maybe the count or non-count, if that is used in a non-count sense, then also we cannot pluralize this, even though it is a count noun, but we cannot pluralize it because it is used in a non-count sense. So in continuation to it, there are certain other rules. So basically we get confused when we are using nouns, whether to use this article or that article, which article would be appropriate for a count noun or a non-count noun, or a singular one or a plural one. So we'll see certain rules here which have to be followed. In case if it is a count noun and it is singular, let's say for example, cat or dog. So you're talking about one cat, one dog. So usually you cannot start a sentence with a count noun or a singular one. you have to always, that sentence always needs the support of an article. So you should start as a cat or an ant or something like that. So it cannot, the noun itself cannot start the sentence. So if it is singular, so that's why we use the support of these articles like a cat, a dog, something like that. So in case if it is you, we are talking about one specific thing, it is related to one particular animal or one particular person or one particular this thing. As we know, the is a definite article which can be used with count nouns and non-count nouns, singular ones, plural ones, everyone, because if we are talking about in a specific definite usage. So this or that, we can say this cat, that cat. So for a singular count noun, it is very appropriate to use this cat, that cat. But we cannot say these cat, those cat, because these and those are used in a pluralized sense. So these are applicable for a plural count nouns. So this cannot be applicable for a singular nouns, these and those. And no article, as I said, a singular count noun cannot start a sentence. It always needs a support of article, or not, if not starting the sentence, at least in the middle of the sentence also, it has to have a support of an article. So no article is not an right rule which has to be used for count singular noun. So if we see the second one, plural count nouns. So as we know, a or an cannot be used for the plural one, so that is not applicable here, but that can definitely be used. The reason is we are talking specifically about one particular thing or situation. So as we know, because this is plural, this or that cannot be used. We cannot say this cats, that cats. We say these cats, those cats. So these are appropriate for that plural one. And no article, yes, they can, plural count nouns can come without an article also. How? We'll see some examples which are listed in the next slides. And non-count nouns. So a or an, this particular thing cannot be used with non-count nouns. So, but the can be used because it is applicable to all of those count and non-count nouns if you're talking specifically about thing, not in general. And this or that can be also used, say for example, difficulty. If you're talking about difficulty inside a thing, this is difficult or that is difficult, we often use this, but we don't say these difficult, those difficult. Only if we are using that non-count noun in non-count sense, like for example, these difficulties I faced while making the project, or those kites which are flown in during Sankranti or something like that. So in such a situation. And yes, non-count noun can come without the support of any of the article. So these are the rules which you have to keep in mind for all the count, non-count and plural count nouns. So we'll see some examples here. So first we'll start with the singular count nouns. If you see here, we said I ate an apple. Apple is a singular count noun. Apples can be countable. So we used an. I rode the bus. Bus can be countable. So the is used because you're talking specifically about bus. That is the thing. So does she live in this house? No, she lives in that house. So here in this case, as we know, in the previous rule we have seen this or that can be used for count singular nouns. So that is the reason why I used she lives in this house, she lives in that house. So this and that is also appropriate here because it is count and singular noun. So in case of count nouns which are pluralized, if you see, I like to feed the birds. So because you're talking specifically about birds, because there could be many animals, so what you're specifically talking about one thing in a context where birds are being discussed. So I like to feed the birds. You are being very specific here. So that is the reason why you have used the here, because it is used in a specific sense. Do you want these books? Books is a plural noun. So that's why we have used these. You are talking specifically about these particular books, which the people who are in discussion are discussing. No, I want those books. So you're talking about, again, books is a non-count noun. So these and those would become appropriate here. Cats are interesting pets. As I said, cats, plural one. So it can come without the support of an article. So that's why you say cats. We did not say the cats or a cats like that. So cats are interesting pets. You started it without the support of an article. Non-count. In case of non-count, we'll see some of the non-count nouns. So the first example is the water is cold. So obviously you can use the for water because you're specifically talking about that water, maybe the person who they are discussing with, they are talking about water or water state. So they have said the water is cold. So you are being very specific here. It is used in specific sense. This milk is going sour. You can obviously use this or that for non-count nouns, but not these or those, because they are used only in non-count sense of, if they're talking about pluralized things. So it is not pluralized here, milk. You're talking about milk, which is non-count noun. This milk is going sour, or that milk is going sour. So this cat is something like that. This cat is running fast, or this difficulty which I faced in running, or maybe something like that, which you have used. Music helps me relax. So music is a non-count noun. It did not take any support of any article here. So these are the examples for the above table. There are certain other continuation of rules, some few more rules which we have to take into account. So not all the time we use only the, I, or an, or this, that, those, this. In certain situations, all the count, non-count nouns, they are used with a quantity. So usually much, less, many, such things are used to quantify things, either it be count nouns or non-count nouns, just to increase the intensity of what the noun which we are talking, just to give us a clarity about to quantify things. So we'll see some of the rules here. In case of count nouns which are in singular, so for example cat, dog, such things, we cannot use much, less, little, very little, because it is only one cat or one dog or one box, something like that. So this, it will not be appropriate. It will not be appropriate here to use for singular count nouns. Likewise, some, any, most, more. You cannot say most cat, more cat. You say most cats or more cats. So for singular nouns, these things are not appropriate. If you move to the next column, many, both, you won't say many cat. You won't say both cat. You say many cats, both cats. So again, for singular count nouns, you cannot use many, both, several, few, fewer, which are actually trying to quantify things. But you can always say each cat or each dog which has participated in this competition or something like that. If you say, you can always use it. Every dog in this colony, or maybe every cat in this particular area, or every plant in this nursery. In such a sense, you can always use count or non-count nouns. So only this rule is applicable for singular count nouns. If you see count nouns which are used pluralized, much, less, little is not appropriate here. You cannot say much cats or less cats, little cats. So those are not appropriate here. If you see, some cats are wild. Most of the cats usually are very fast or very agile, or something like that. You can mention about their characteristics. So plural count nouns, you can use some, any, most, or such things. And also many cats, you can say many cats, or both of these cats are friends, or something like that. Several or few, fewer, you can always use. So these two would be applicable here. And likewise, you cannot say each cats. You cannot say every cats. You're talking specifically about one singular cat. So obviously this is not applicable here. And we'll move to the non-count usage of non-count nouns, how they would act in this particular situation. So non-count nouns, like for example, the difficulty which I mentioned, difficulty, anger. He is much anger today than yesterday. You can say such things. So non-count nouns, even they cannot be counted. So, but still they can take place, even though they have not been pluralized. They can definitely use much, less, little, just to show just to magnify the noun. We can obviously use much, less, little, because it gives adequate clarity about the noun. Is it normal, or is it too big, or is it something? So it basically quantifying without giving a number. So much anger, less anger, or little anger, such thing. You can say I faced some difficulty while doing this homework. So difficulty is a non-count noun. You're talking about some or any, usually one particular noun which non-count noun which you are talking about, which cannot be pluralized. So in that particular sense, this can be used. So you can, in case of non-count nouns, you cannot say many difficulty. You will say many difficulties, because non-count noun is used in count, which has been pluralized, because that is used in count sense. But many is not used for count sense. So difficulties or such things, it will many would be applicable there because many are both, they can be used for pluralized sense. But non-count noun, which cannot be pluralized, so many or both, several will not make any sense here. Likewise, each, every, one, anyone is also not applicable for the non-count nouns like anger, or maybe gratitude, love, friendship, or anger, something like that. So these are the rules. We'll see certain examples with these quantity terms which you have mentioned just now. So first, to start with, we'll start the count nouns which are singular. So I practice every day. So you have used every here. As we know, in the previous example, we can definitely use each, every for the count noun. So here if you see, I practice every day. So it becomes fluent here. I'd like one donut. Donut is one singular particular item which is a countable noun, but it is used in singular one. So one is used here. If you see plural count nouns which have been pluralized. So can I have some chips? You're talking about chips. So as we know, some can be used here. If you know count plural nouns, some is used here. So you're talking about some chips, which is specifically talking about this, the quantity or the chips in general. So she has a lot of books and many are autographed. So books is a countable noun, which is used in which has been pluralized, and a lot of has been used. I have fewer pencils than you, giving more adequate clarity about number of pencils. It is giving whether they are few or nothing. So this is also applicable, relevant here. So non-count nouns, so basically which are not pluralized. So if you see, can I have some water? So water is a non-count noun. Some is used. If you see here, some is being, it is applicable for the non-count nouns also. So she has a lot of strength and much is due to her upbringing. So you're talking about the strength, the quality, which cannot be, in generally, which cannot be pluralized. So you have again used a lot of strength. So I have less courage than you. Less is used for courage. If you see here in the previous example, less, much, it is applicable to the non-count nouns. So it has been used here in this sense. So with these rules, we'll try to practice certain examples. So I have listed some of the examples here, and we'll start one by one. To start with the first one. So it says there are a dozen flowers in the vase. So if I just want to know if it is appropriate or if it has been used correctly, or are there any mistakes here? I just wanted to know from you. So is it fine, or there has to be some changes to the sentence?
Flower has to change to flowers.
Yeah. Okay. Flower has to be changed to flowers. Okay. That is right actually. So you are basically talking about a dozen. Dozen is actually talking about the plural noun. So flowers is appropriate here. That's correct. So the second example, he ate an apple for a snack. Is it right or something wrong?
He ate an apple for a snack.
Apple.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So because apples is a count noun which has been pluralized. So a or an is not applicable here. So if an is used, so it has to be apple, not apples. So correct. So s has to be removed. Here s has to be added. If you see the third example, she attended 3 classes today. Is it fine, or are there any changes to be made?
She attended 3 classes today.
Right.
Classes.
Correct. So basically you're quantifying things. So 3 is actually number talking about so class, that plural, so it is not been pluralized. So we have to pluralize this noun. So it has to be presented in classes. We have to add yes. If we see the fourth example, London is home to several orchestras. Any changes needed, or is it fine?
I think it's fine.
I think, yeah.
Is it fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
London is home to several orchestras. Orchestra. Several orchestras.
I think it's fine.
It's fine, I think, yes.
Actually, it is fine because you're talking about London is home to several orchestras. Basically, all the different types of orchestras which are available in London. So several is very appropriate for this particular non-count nouns. So several is very much used because London cannot have one orchestra. there could be multiple different types of orchestra and you're highlighting those things.
Mm.
So because there are types of orchestras, several is used and it has been pluralized. So it is appropriate. Fourth one. Fifth one, if we see, there are many Greeks living in New York. Is it fine or any changes need to be made?
It's fine.
It's
So
fine. Yeah.
that refers to the number of people of Greek nationality.
Right, that is talking about the number of people. So it has been pluralized. So many is definitely applicable to pluralized noun. So it becomes correct. So we'll move to the sixth example. Bird flew over the trees. Is it fine or are there any changes to be made?
Mm.
Here I would say it should be birds, because if it is a singular, then you should have an article before that, a bird or the bird. So if we are saying bird flew over the trees, it should actually be birds without an article.
Right, what Sai has mentioned is correct. In this particular situation, A is appropriate here. You should say a bird flew over the trees. So you're talking about a bird which flew over the trees. If you're talking birds in specific sense, birds flew over the trees, or then the should come. So in this particular sense, so because it is count noun which is used in singular sense, it has to have an article which is a. In case if it has vowel sound, then we use an. Here in this case, a is appropriate here, so we put a bird flew over the trees. In case you are talking in specific about the birds, which is plural countable nouns, then in that case the will come here, but here a would come here, so then it becomes appropriate. So we'll see the seventh example. Officer arrived quickly. Is it fine or any changes need to be made?
I think we have to add an before officer.
Right, that is true. So an has to be added. Officer is a singular noun and it starts with an vowel sound. So an officer arrived quickly. So if you're talking specifically about a particular officer, maybe an engineering officer or accounting officer, something like that, then you put if the context has already been set in, you're talking specifically in specific sense if the officer is being used. So that's the thing. So 7 examples are done. We'll see the 8th example here. Robert gave Tina a jewelry for their anniversary. Any suggestions here?
I think we have to remove a. No, one second. Yes, I think we have to remove a before jewelry because it's Robert gave Tina jewelry for their anniversary.
Any reason why we have to remove a sound?
So we have to not to use article with this is a jewelry means non-countable nouns.
Right, that is correct. Jewelry is a non-countable noun, so it cannot be distinguished unless until if we mention it in rings, necklaces. If we distinguish, then it will. But in general, jewelry is non-countable noun, so a has to be removed. So a is not appropriate here for the jewelry because it is non-countable noun. So that's correct. So if you see the final example, the 9th example, the health is very important to Liz. So any suggestions here?
You can remove the.
So that is actually correct. We have to remove that because it is a generic sense which you are using. In general, health is actually a non-count noun. And non-count noun which cannot be pluralized here because you are not talking about different types of health. So non-count noun, it is used in a generic sense. Health is very important to list. Health is important. That is what you have said. You are not talking about specific health condition or something like that. So the is not appropriate here because health is not being used in a specific sense. So health is important to list. So that is actually the appropriate usage. So with these examples, we have just I'm going to conclude the non-count and count nouns topics. So this is what I have got for today. Any doubts on these topics too?
Just to add one point on the same, pluralizing certain nouns and not pluralizing certain others. So there are some nouns which, though they can be counted, we should still not add an s. That is, we have words like sheep or DE or furniture. So even though if there are many furnitures, we should still not say furnitures, but we should say furniture. So even if you bought like 5 tables and 10 chairs, you say I bought some furniture. You don't say I bought furnitures. Similarly, if there are some 5 sheep or 10 sheep, you say there are 5 sheep in the field or something like that. You don't say sheeps or deers. It is still, though there are many, you still use the singular form for these exception words.
Oh, deer is also in the same category?
Yes, Chaitanya.
Oh, okay.
So what Sai specifically is talking about is this thing. So if we know for sure that noun may be used in either count or non-count, it can be used in both sense. Like for example, sheep is used in that sense. So we have to question ourselves whether it is appropriate to pluralize it or not. So in case of sheep, it is not appropriate. So that is the thing here. So if it is can be used in count and non-count nouns, we have to question whether it is appropriate to pluralize. Some could be pluralized, some cannot be. Those are the things which you have to keep in mind. So this is the contents for today's session.